That's kind of the raise the hands.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukie Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the city website at www.milwaukieoregon.gov. You may locate them by navigating to the community calendar where tonight's meeting page is posted. If you have not reviewed the agenda, please do so. It contains important information about the process. The city of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalipuya Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. I'd just like to take a moment and silence to recognize the Clackamas people. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the April 8th, 2025 meeting minutes. Does anyone have any corrections to make? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. I think we were unanimous, so we can move on. Are there any informational items from staff?
I would just like to say, just like I did last time we were all together, it is high season in Milwaukie for lots of fun things to do. There's a lot of happening in the city right now, so I just encourage everyone to check the community calendar. Saturday is like full. There's something going on from like 9 to 3 on Saturday, and then the farmers market's on Sunday. So get out there, enjoy the summer while you can, even if it's still kind of cool and rainy. That happens. It's the Pacific Northwest. All right, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is an opportunity to comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Does any audience member wish to comment on an item that is not on tonight's commission agenda?
I do not see anyone that wants to comment tonight.
Okay. As far as virtual attendees, Laura?
No, no one virtually.
Okay. So then we can move on and do our first hearing item. So the next agenda item is a type 3 application for a conditional use to establish a vacation rental, file number CU-2025-002. The type 3 application for 8525 Southeast 32nd Avenue is called to order. The applicant has the burden of proving that the application is consistent with the city's zoning and subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, any applicable municipal code provision, and that the proposal conforms with the city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance section or sections where the criteria can be found.
Thank you, Chair Edge. The applicable sections are from Milwaukie Municipal Code, Section 19.301, Moderate Density Residential Zone, or R-MD, Section 19.905, Conditional Uses, and Section 19.1006, Type 3 Review.
Thank you, Brett. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address a criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow a response precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party with standing may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to the City Council. Persons with standing are those who submit comments or testify. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the Commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. Does any member of the Commission wish to abstain from this hearing? Seeing none, does any member of the Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest? Seeing none, does any member of the commission wish to report on any ex parte contacts? No. Will any commissioner who has visited the site prior to this hearing please raise their hand? Okay, thank you. Does any commissioner who visited the site speak to anyone at the site or note anything different from what is indicated in the staff report for this application? No. Okay, thank you. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the Planning Commission?
That's whether anyone in the audience wants to challenge the participation of any of the planning commissioners. No. That's a no.
Thank you. And then does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? Okay. Let's proceed to the staff report.
All right, Chair Edge, Commissioners, good evening. Brett Kelver, a senior planner with the city, and we'll pull up the PowerPoint presentation here to walk you through this application for a vacation rental at 8525 Southeast 32nd Avenue. All right, so a real quick overview of the site. This is a property that's located near the northern boundary of the city on 32nd Avenue. It's just under 5,600 square foot lot. It's currently developed with a single detached dwelling, so one house that's been on the site. And it has been used as a short-term rental with the owners in primary residence there over the past 8 years. It's a good-sized house. It's about a little over 2,700 square feet with 5 bedrooms and 3 baths. The zoning of this area is R-MD, or moderate density residential. The subject property is there in the crosshatch red, and you'll see that happens to be just adjacent to one small area of neighborhood mixed use, or NMU, zoning on the site. That NMU area, I think, is still just developed with essentially a couple of houses. There's an old church building there, I think. All right, just to quickly line out the difference between short-term rental and vacation rental in our code. The terminology can be a little confusing, and there are some similarities. Both of these rental types are in fact short-term. They're for stays of 30 days, of less than 30 days. So any rental that's 30 days or longer counts as a long-term rental, and it's what you'd expect if someone's renting out a house, to roommates or people living there on a longer-term basis. The difference is with what the code calls as a short-term rental, that's where the space is being occupied as a primary residence. Either the owners or there's occupants that are there and use it as their primary residence for at least 9 months out of the year. And there can be a number of different scenarios here. It can be someone who lives there full time and maybe there's a room or two that they rent out on a short-term basis, but it's clearly still their house. Or maybe one example might be someone who's a teacher and leaves town for the summer. So for 3 months, maybe they're renting out the entire house. But so there are hosted and unhosted situations, but at the end of the day, a short-term rental is still someone's primary residence. And a difference with a vacation rental, the idea is that there is no formal primary occupant. I think one example that I like to point out for folks, just for reference, is something like if you go to the Oregon coast, there are houses that it's no one's residence, no one's really ever living there. It's available kind of a lot of the time for folks to rent for weekends or periods like that. It could be that there's a situation where someone is living there a few months, several months of the year as their primary residence, but it doesn't reach that threshold of nine months. So that's the difference between the vacation rental and the short-term rental. Vacation rentals are essentially a type of commercial lodging, and they're allowed in both the moderate density and the high density residential zones, but they do require this conditional use review. And I think, one way to look at it is a vacation rental is in a way removing a housing unit from kind of typical housing use, but it is potentially providing some other unmet need where there may be, especially in a place like Milwaukie we don't have any hotels here. So a situation where maybe someone's having a wedding or people are coming into town to stay or visit with someone at the hospital or something like that. So there is a role for them, and that's, I think, why the code acknowledges that they're allowed as a conditional use. So the approval criteria for conditional uses in general are in subsection 19.905.4, and there are 7 of them. We've highlighted there are 3 that we think are particularly relevant to the vacation rental question, and essentially it has to do with what are some of the characteristics or the aspects of the property, the site. Does it create a situation where that vacation rental use can be what's considered reasonably compatible with nearby uses? Are there impacts that are going to be generated by the vacation rental? It would need some kind of mitigation. Kind of generally, how does it fit into the neighborhood use there? The staff report covers this, and I think the applicant's materials did a nice job just presenting kind of their overall approach to managing this. And as was noted earlier, they have been operating this site as a short-term rental where it's been their primary residence, but they've had some experience over the last 8 years operating it as some form of a rental. And some of the points that they emphasized as contributing to what they think has been the success for the short-term rental and what they think will continue to be a success for the vacation rental are some of the parameters that they set in terms of group size, some of the screening criteria that they go through, the requirement of a minimum 2-night stay to kind of reduce the one-night party opportunity, establishing some quiet hours, providing rules of the house in advance. And the site itself, these are a couple photos here on the right, it has room for off-street parking for at least a couple cars. There's no on-street parking on 32nd Avenue, but there's also quite a bit of screening and fencing around the rear of the property. So all those factors contribute to what the applicant asserts and what I think staff agrees is a formula for some success there. The code as well has some just general requirements for vacation rentals. This is also deeper in the conditional use section. So when they're approved, there are a couple steps that the vacation rental has to go through. It has to just kind of confirm with our building department that it's up to fire and life safety standards. And then there's also an annual requirement for essentially kind of a notice mailing to properties within 300 feet, just so that the immediate neighbors have access to contact information for the property owner, and everyone is aware of kind of that non-emergency police number, so that there's a way for neighbors, if there is an incident or some concern, to reach out and contact someone to address it. So with that in mind, this is a type 3 review for you. There's some discretion involved, and there are a few options for you in terms of decision making. The staff report and the packet materials include some findings and conditions of approval. The conditions are essentially kind of a reiteration of those standards that are in the code with respect to reporting and going through the building review process. Depending on your discussion and the testimony that you might hear tonight, if you want to make some modifications to the findings or conditions, that's an option as well. If you think that there's a need to discuss this further, there's an option to continue the hearing, or if you felt that the proposed vacation rental didn't meet the standards, you could move to deny the application. If you did that, we'd need to make some alternate findings in that direction. So with that in mind, I think I'll just sum up by saying that the staff recommendation was to approve the vacation rental, and I'll ask if you have any questions.
Very clarifying questions for staff from the commission. Okay, hearing none. Brett, I think you did a pretty good job covering that, so thank you. Let's see, then have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items included in the meeting packet?
No, we've not received any correspondence other than the one comment that was received before the packet, which was included in the packet. So that one comment that's in the packet is the one that we received so far.
Excellent, thank you. Would the applicant or their representative like to comment? And please just state your name and city of residence for the record.
Yeah, my name is Mike Jeske, and that is my residence, although we are moving to Gladstone as we speak. There we go. So, yeah, I would be happy to answer questions, but I think Brett said it pretty well. So if you got any questions or would like any, opinion or whatever, I'd be happy to answer.
Do any commissioners have questions for the applicant?
No questions,
Okay.
but appreciate the information that you provided in the background. Thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. We will now recognize those persons submitting public testimony on this application. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria, and to avoid repetition and information not relevant. Please state your name and city of residence for the record so they may be entered into the minutes. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application?
No, we do not.
Do we have anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of the application?
Yes, we do. We have Austin Brown has presented a yellow slip here. Come on up to any of the microphones, just push the red button, state your name, city of residence, and go ahead.
Austin Brown, Milwaukie. We actually live on 31st behind the property in question. Like I say, I'm a property rights person or a private property kind of person, but as we all know, the reason you guys are here is because we do curtail private property rights, hence the commission. And personally, we have a personal interest in this in that we are neighbors and we know most of our neighbors. Since we've noticed this sign, I will just say the last 2 weekends, we've had people, we're kind of below the property, so there's a deck that kind of looks down on us, and there have been people out there on the deck 2:30 in the morning the last 2 weekends. Hasn't been a tremendous racket, but it's just something different, and I think realistically speaking, a 5-bedroom house, the odds that 2 old people going to the hospital renting it are probably lower than, say, 10 people having some sort of a function that they don't have the personal space for and where they live. So that is the main issue that we have. Another issue is we do get the Milwaukie mailer every month, and seems like the first or second thing always is affordable housing. And I think you'll find most studies show that vacation rentals in neighborhoods do not contribute to affordable housing. It takes one either full-time rental or one home for sale off of the market. So you're decreasing supply, which can have a downstream effect of prices going up. Also, it's kind of incongruent with the neighborhood feel, knowing your neighbor, being able to talk to your neighbor, knowing that that person will be there has a little more accountability than someone for 2 nights. I mean, I'm sure we can call and make noise complaints, but the person there doesn't particularly care after that day is over. I think that's it.
Thank you for your comments. Do any commissioners have any questions for for the commenter?
Hi, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Were you given the information that Brett provided as part of the contact information, and were you able to contact the property owner when those situations at 2:30 in the morning were occurred this last couple of weekends?
I did not have I do have the information now, and I would very certainly make contact we were kind of waiting just for the commission thing to see how it goes. And I mean, we didn't have all the answers as to, is that a vacation rental? I mean, I assumed it was, since we didn't recognize the 4 or 5 people on the deck talking at 2 in the morning. So it's usually kind of quiet at 2 in the morning. So.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate your time. And then, does anyone wish to offer neutral testimony, or are there other speakers who wish to offer to speak in opposition? I guess I should ask that first.
There are not. There are no other folks here to testify.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Are there any responses to the testimony from staff?
You will, yeah. Just to respond to Commissioner Garvey's question, to clarify that those are requirements for, providing an annual notice to neighbors go into effect with the approval of a vacation rental. So a short-term rental does not have those same requirements. And I think part of the difference of the understanding is that as a short-term rental, with it being someone's primary residence, that there is kind of someone who is a more long-term neighbor, at least for the time being, that could be outreach to. But with that transition to a vacation rental, that's when the notice requirement comes up, just to clarify. I don't have any other comments or clarifications, though, beyond that.
Thanks, Brett. Does any member of the Planning Commission have questions regarding the testimony to this point? Nope. Okay.
I'm sorry, I do. So
please.
Can there just be clarification on whether or not it was used as a vacation rental prior to today? And is that an allowable use before it's approved and presented to the commission?
All right, thanks for the question. And to clarify again, it comes into play a little bit with the description or the comparison or distinction between short-term rental and vacation rental. So even now, I think the applicant has indicated they're in the process of moving, but it's still identified as their primary residence. So it is allowable with a business registration and annual business tax to operate it as a short-term rental. Without needing commission approval.
And it has been for quite some time.
It has been for the last 8 years.
For the last 8 years,
short-term.
it's been functioning as that.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, Brett, it's fair to say that the only thing that's changing is that this will no longer be the primary residence of the applicant.
That's correct. Yes.
But okay, thank you very much. Does the applicant have any rebuttal or any additional comments in response to the public testimony?
First off, good to meet you. I've seen you over the fence a little bit every now and then, but I've never met you. So I've been there 20-something years, but.
I've lived there for 25 years.
Nice to meet you. In response to your comment, some of those as far as policies, it's not really my authority to comment on, but, as somebody that's been there, for that long, I feel like, the neighborhood feel on 32nd is probably a lifetime different than your neighborhood feel. Hence the reason I don't really know my neighbors all that well. It's like in the last 25 years, it's gotten crazy busy on 32nd, which is one of the reasons we wanted to move with young children. I have received calls from other neighbors, asking me about it, asking me questions or what I plan to do and all that. But I have not received a call from you. I would more than happily address any items with that. It doesn't have to be a policy thing here. What I'm saying is you got people talking, I'll put signs up on those doors with access to the patio saying, don't not enter the patio after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever, to address that. We rented our house out for a very brief time for a year when we left and then came back. And I think the neighbor in the church has hated us ever since. So, we're not looking to make enemies, and I'm also not looking to long-term rent, as it's a lot harder to manage your tenant behavior versus a short-term rental. But what I would like to, I would like to make sure you have my phone number, assuming anything gets approved. If you want me to plant some trees in that corner, put some signs up, be more than happy to do that. And I do kind of agree with the statement about Airbnb taking up, or, vacation rentals taking up, available house and raising prices, but I'm also not the person coming in here with a bunch of cash, just buying a house and trying to make a bunch of money off of it. It's been my home for 25 years. So, for whatever that's worth. But all I'm saying by the comment is this is, by being a short-term rental, we have the ability to actually manage it better than a long-term rental. Try to not make enemies with the neighbors would be fantastic. And I'd be very happy if everybody had my phone number, and you give it to your neighbors if you want. There's a problem. I don't want it any more than you do. So, anyway, I just want to offer that as an opinion as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for your comments. So at this point, I will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Public testimony portion of the hearing on the request of the Type 3 conditional use application at 8525 Southeast 32nd Avenue, file number CU-2025-002 is now closed. Is the commission ready for discussion?
Yes.
Who would like to go first?
I don't mind getting started.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. First of all, I want to thank everyone for taking their time to present today, just to have, to take the time to be part of the public discussion is really important. And I appreciate people, just being very honest and frank. That's really helpful to see, how you feel. I think there's certain things that, it's not my first rental that we've gone through, but we don't get them that often. There are concerns that I hear from folks that I think are very valid, and I think that there are ways to mitigate those. Here, I feel a lot of the mitigation is already in place with the screening, with the foliage. You do have parking on site, which is actually really nice to see because it's not a requirement. And so I think the fact that there's parking is very helpful for your neighbors, helps, mitigate any potential nuisance there. I think having your quiet hours and having those posted is really important. Though not a requirement that I would add for a condition to approval, I would highly recommend you continue the dialogue with understanding any signage, like perhaps if you had something to consider, just something on the patio that says, remember, quiet hours start at 10, or just finding ways to kind of remind people to have better habits. And then, having the contact information for people hopefully allows you to have multiple avenues to bring up any issues you have. So I do think that there is some good mitigation in place. I think your property is clearly very well maintained. Sounds like you intend to continue with that. In some ways, I think that is a plus to having more of a short-term rental versus like long-term rental, because with long-term rentals, a lot of times the maintenance falls to the people living there, which could be a little bit more hit or miss. So I do think that it helps provide consistent appearance, and that the appearance is consistent with the neighborhood character by doing that, which is one of the things I identified that I like to check for. And it seems fairly compatible. I think the only part that is not 100% compatible to me, but I don't think necessarily has to be to meet the requirements, is the idea of there being up to 12 people, because that's a lot. Seems like kind of a lot of people staying in one house. I get with the number of bedrooms why that's an option, and I understand having stayed in houses on the coast and places where they're, they could have up to 15 people. That's not always going to have 12 people in it. But that's probably when people are looking for a house with more bedroom options, usually it's because they need that many. So it is it could be kind of a large group, but you do have 2 parking spots. You have the quiet hours. You have a large enough lot that it kind of buffers the sound. But I think just making sure that you're aware of how you're presenting the rules and, being open to communicating with people around you, I think that will go a long way, or would go a long way. So personally, I am inclined to approve the application with the recommended findings and conditions, because I do think that it meets the criteria, and I think it meets the, on a technical level, it meets the requirements. And so that's, appreciate your time presenting that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Would any other commissioners like to add their comments?
Yeah, and I would just like to thank you guys for having some communication and really encourage the additional dialogue. I think it will help both parties. I'm sure that if there was, you would appreciate a phone call or a text if there was some kind of incidents happening there that you know, as being the long-term property owner. So I appreciate that. It's also nice to know that you're not going too far. And so hopefully there'll be some checking on the property and still maintaining it. So I agree. I'm comfortable with approving with the conditions.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with comment?
Yeah, thank you for your testimony. I think having the discussion is important, especially maintaining relationships as, you know, you are both owners of properties that are touching. And so that is going to be at least a immediate term thing coming in the future. I think the use for a short-term rental on a busy street like 32nd is maybe more appropriate than it is in the middle of a neighborhood. I'm inclined to approve because of that and the off-street parking that is provided as well. So nothing further to add from my side.
Okay. Any other comments before I make the floor?
I'm satisfied with how the application has met the criteria. And I'm also personally put at ease by the fact that the applicant is moving so nearby, and echo what my fellow commissioners have said about hoping that there's regular checkups on the property and that we can maintain this dialogue with neighbors as well. So I am comfortable moving forward with approval.
Can I add one more comment? Sorry. I would just highly recommend, I've seen some, like in the posts for Airbnb where they don't allow events. So I would encourage you to consider that.
We have it.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I will jump in now. In reviewing the findings and conditions of approval, or the findings, from the staff report, it does accurately represent, the evidence in the record. And I'm satisfied that the criteria is met for approval. Ultimately, this represents a very minimal change in the function of this site, because it has been used as a short-term rental for a number of years, and the only thing that's changing is that the owner will no longer be using the property as their primary residence, and that is the technicality that what necessitates this type 3 review. And so it's really quite a jump from even though there's not a lot of change in function, there's a big kind of regulatory requirement in terms of coming before the commission for a discretionary hearing. Ultimately, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room in terms of the discretion. It does check all the boxes, and and it's it does again meet the criteria and warrants approval. Just to kind of comment a little bit on the housing supply concerns. There are very few permitted vacation rentals in the city of Milwaukie, and so we are taking a very small number of dwellings off the market by this by approving these permits. And ultimately, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan policies, because, we do recognize that presents a challenge. And so, we do have the conditional use review in order to make sure, that, that these are meeting certain criteria, and that we're not, just allowing, any number of housing units to be converted over, to short-term, or vacation rental properties instead of, primary dwellings. So the again, the policies are ultimately satisfied by this. Plus, it provides a little bit of commercial lodging, which I believe Brett brought up, very early in the staff report. And that is a challenge for the city. And a corridor like 32nd Avenue is a pretty good place to allow that kind of use. So while that's ultimately not part of the criteria, it is just something to observe as being a good location for this type of use. So I'll ask the commission again if there are any other comments that they'd like to make before I seek a motion, but I think we're pretty much there. Okay, I entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
And we have a motion to approve application CU.2025-002 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Then let's see, all those, let's see. Could I have staff poll the commissioners for their votes?
We've got Commissioner Garvey,
Aye.
Commissioner Pennick,
Aye.
Commissioner Lothar,
Aye.
Commissioner Graycheck,
Aye.
Commissioner Hess,
Aye.
Chair Edge.
Aye. So the application CU.2025-002 is approved. If anyone wishes to appeal the commission's decision to the city council, you must make an application stating the grounds for your appeal within 15 days of the mailing of the notice of decision. Please see planning staff for details. So we can move directly into our next hearing unless we need a break.
Chair Edge, we would like to just take a moment to take a break. We did just receive some comments on the upcoming application, so I'd like to have the opportunity to distribute them and have folks, the commissioners, read them ahead of the hearing. So I think if we could take a 5-minute break, that should be sufficient time to hand out the comments.
Okay, then we'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll reconvene at 7:14.
Chair Edge, we're back on the air.
Thank you. The next agenda item is a Type 3 application for downtown design review, file number DR-2025-001. The Type 3 application for 10900 Southeast 21st Avenue is called to order. The applicant has the burden of proving that the application is consistent with the city's zoning and subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, any applicable municipal code provision, and that the proposal conforms with the city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance section or sections where the criteria can be found.
The criteria, the applicable sections of the Milwaukie Municipal Code are Municipal Code Title 12, Street, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Section 19.304, Downtown Mixed Use Zone, Section 19.508, Downtown Site and Building Design Standards and Guidelines, Chapter 19.600, Off-Street Parking and Loading, Chapter 19.700, Public Improvements, Section 19.907, Downtown Design Review, and Section 19.1006, Type 3 Review.
Thank you, Vera. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address the criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow a response precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party with standing may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to the City Council. Persons with standing are those who submit comments or testify. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the Commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. Does any member of the Commission wish to abstain from this hearing? No. Does any member of the Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest? No. Does any member of the Commission wish to report on any ex parte contacts? No. Will any commissioner who has visited the site prior to this hearing please raise their hand? Thank you. Did any commissioner who visited the site speak to anyone at the site or note anything different from what is indicated in the staff report for this application? No. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the Planning Commission?
No.
Nope. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter?
There are no members in the audience, Chair Edge.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's proceed to the staff report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Vera, Kolias, Senior Planner, to present the staff report for DR 2025-001. Okay. The site is located at 10900 Southeast 21st Ave and 2120 Southeast Monroe Street. So it is this corner lot that's identified here on the map outlined in orange. It's the former site of Chase Bank and its adjacent parking lot. The site has frontages on both 21st Avenue and Monroe Street. The proposal, as described in the application materials with the drawings that were attached to the application, the applicant is seeking land use approval to develop the site with a 4-story multi-unit building for 45 dwelling units, and also to make improvements to the existing parking lot to provide 17 parking spaces for the residents. 9 of those parking spaces are slated to be EV parking spaces. The building would have a common amenity room and a secure bike room on the first floor, and the upper floor units would have balconies. The units will be a mix, as shown on the floor plans, as a mix of studios, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units.
The next couple of slides are the proposed street-facing facades and the elevations. This is the elevation proposed for Monroe Street, so this would be directly across the street from the Waldorf School playing field and parking area. And then this is the 21st Avenue elevation there at the corner. And you can see the main entrance is right there. And then that first floor to the left on the bottom those are the windows for that ground floor amenity room. And then to the right, the windows there that's where the secure bike room is proposed to be located. Development in the downtown is subject to two different sections of code, 19.907, which is the downtown design review process, which outlines how downtown design review is conducted for applications within the downtown. And then 19.508 lays out the actual design and the development standards for buildings for proposed development in the downtown. There are two tracks for review for development in the downtown. The applicant can comply with all of the clear and objective standards that are outlined in 19.508, or the applicant could elect to meet a design guideline. And that's why we are here tonight. Meeting the design guidelines rather than the clear and objective standard is a discretionary review, and that's the type 3 review. So the application itself, as outlined in the staff report and then in the findings as well, is here for type 3 review because the proposal, the design of the building does not meet one of the design standards in MMC 19.508 that relates to building massing, where there's a specific standard for a 6-foot step back for the upper floors above the base maximum height. The applicant's design does not provide that 6-foot step back. They have elected to respond to the design guidelines related to building massing and transitions, rather than have that actual 6-foot step back on that upper area of the building. Okay. So in the analysis that staff conducted in reviewing the application, the key question for the Planning Commission as part of your review, is the proposal consistent with the purpose and intent of the downtown design guideline related to building massing and transitions? Because that's where we find that design standard, and that's the design guidelines that they are electing to meet. So the design elements in 508 are intended, of course, to have high quality building design and construction, complement the district development patterns, and foster human scale design and adding vitality. And so your review is to evaluate the proposal against those approval guidelines and standards for those design elements itself. The standards and guidelines support the development of a cohesive, attractive, and safe downtown area. So in 508, there are a collection of downtown design elements related to site frontage and weather protection, building entrances, windows, and the like. What you'll see here is letter H, or number H, building massing and transitions. That is the one downtown design standard that the design does not meet. There are many pages of findings in the packet that outlines how the design meets all of the math of the standards, but the building massing and transitions, this is the one where they are electing to meet the guideline instead. So the design element, the idea behind, or the design intent of this design element is talking about building massing for those upper floors. This is a 4-story building. The base maximum height is 3. So that upper 10 feet of the building is where we're talking about the building massing. We want to have buildings that are compatible. Building scale breaks up the perceived massing of larger buildings for that extra floor. We want to have an inviting pedestrian realm at the street, increasing access to light and air. So we don't want just a big box, right? We want to have some transitions within the architecture of the design. And we want to have scaled transitions that are adjacent to residential uses, again, to lessen the impact of building massing. So the standard is to provide that 6-foot step back on that street facing facade where it's above the base maximum height. The guideline talks about mitigating the impact of additional height with step backs, facade insets, or other perceived mass reducing kinds of techniques, and incorporate height variation that can break up the overall massing of that building for that top 10 feet of the building. So again, here's the facade on 21st Ave. And as the applicant talks about in their application, the 6-foot step back would reduce the area of the floor, resulting in a reduction of the size in the units on that upper floor. And I'm not an architect, but Jean is on the Zoom to answer any questions, but it results in an unstacked exterior wall when you're pressing in and out with the facades, and it can result in waterproofing challenges. So when the exterior walls don't align with the walls below, it can create engineering challenges as well. So they have elected to not provide that full 6-foot step back, but the design has a 3-foot cornice that steps vertically 4 feet to break up that top. So you can see how it kind of steps on that top portion of the wall. Balconies are provided to break up the wall as well, and the overall massing for the top 3 floors to help reduce the visual height because you have more things happening on the facades of the buildings. The street facing facades also have sections that step back by 2 feet. So you kind of have a stepping of the facade as well, again, to break up the massing of the building. And the applicant does note the surrounding land uses. You know, you have the Waldorf School across the street. We don't have buildings directly next to on 2 of the sides. So from a massing standpoint, they're not impacting direct adjacent buildings except for the one building just to the north of them. So the surrounding land uses are either they're on corners, so there's street, then there's an open field and the parking area, and then there's a parking area across 21st Ave as well. So they're not right on top of buildings all the way around either. And again, the applicant does talk about the challenges of providing that full 6-foot step back, and so used alternate design techniques to achieve the same result that the step back would have provided. So in the staff analysis and in our findings, the guideline, we're recommending approval of the application with the guideline being met with that 3-foot cornice that is stepping vertically to break up the top section of the building. We have balconies that break up the facade to help reduce that perceived height and bulk. And there are 2-foot step backs all the way up vertically the building as well to break up the overall massing of the building. So that extra 10 feet of height is broken up with these design decisions that the architect has made. And again, one more look at that facade to kind of get a sense of how there is depth in the facade as well as that vertical break at the top with the cornice as well. So the slides say that no comments have been received, but one was emailed to staff at about 6:45. So the applicant received, I forwarded the email as soon as I received it, and you have received copies of the comments as well. And so the comments are from residents of Monroe Street, summarizing some concerns that they have about unaffordable housing being proposed in downtown. They also had comments about the parking area, actually, and we don't often hear folks not wanting parking to be available or being proposed with this because this is very close to transit, of course. But again, I would just note that it's 17 parking spaces for a 45-unit building, 9 of which will be for electric vehicles. So even though, yes, it is a vehicle parking area, it is quite small for the building size, and it is well below the maximum, parking. We don't have minimum parking requirements, but we do have maximums, and the parking design is certainly below the maximum permitted in our parking code. That's just a very loose summary of the comments, but you have all received them as well. Okay. So again, this is a downtown design review application specifically related to that design guideline related to building massing and transitions. You have some decision-making options, not dissimilar to the ones that Brett talked to you about in the previous hearing. You could approve the application subject to the recommended findings and conditions of approval. You could approve the application with modified findings, conditions of approval. We'd need to read those into the record. You could deny the application, finding that it doesn't meet the approval criteria for that design guideline. We'll need to craft those findings, or you can certainly continue the hearing as well. And staff's recommendation is to approve the application. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any clarifying questions for staff from the commission?
Quick question about the electric vehicle charging. So a portion of them would be electrical vehicle charging. Do we know if there's a potential for them to expand that and include more of the parking as electrical charging in the future if it was popular?
It's a great question. The application says that there will be 9 spaces, but the applicant is on Zoom, so we can certainly ask that question. I'm not aware of that, but they are both, the architect and the developer are both on the call on Zoom, so we can certainly ask them that question.
Okay, I can wait.
Sure.
Any other clarifying questions?
Do we have a precedent for this type of approval in the past?
We do. The Henley Place development also went through a downtown design review. I don't remember all the particulars of which, but it did go through a downtown type 3 downtown design review application. The Coho Point development on the corner of Washington and McLaughlin also went through type 3 downtown design review, and the Axle Tree building also went through downtown design review. And that one actually specifically did ask for relief from the 6-foot step back requirement as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that we're not going, the comment from the neighbors was more directed on rental amounts and affordable housing. Correct. That's not what we're here to discuss, right? We're here to discuss the design of the building, not.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. The application before you is a downtown design review application specific, and it's a type 3 specifically for that building massing and transition. They've raised a lot of very compelling issues, but that is not the application before you tonight. Yes.
And then just to clarify that a little bit further, Vera, the reason that we've been so focused and that the staff report is so focused on just the guideline 8 is because the application meets all of the objective criteria and standards for the other downtown design standards. And so really all that is before us that we have discretion for tonight relates to the building massing and transitions guideline, correct?
That is correct. The findings that were included with the staff report go through each of the design elements. Certainly if a commissioner believes that there's an error in the findings or they don't meet one of those elements, we can certainly discuss that. But staff's analysis found that H was the one that they did not meet the standard itself, and that's the guideline review. That's the discretionary review that's before you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Vera. Any other questions for Vera?
I actually have one question on the transition discussion for the building. Is that within the building itself, or does that talk about transitions to neighboring properties as well? And a second thing would be, if so, how does that, is there a formula for like what the transition is to nearby, like particularly the American Legion that's right next door being 1 story versus the 4-story?
It's a great question. So in the relationship between this building and neighboring buildings, as you can see on the screen, sort of the idea of the building massing is to create compatibility. Certainly the downtown allows for, the base maximum height is 3 stories already, right? So the building massing and transitions section, or these building massing requirements, are for any portion of the building that's above the base maximum. So the base maximum height is already taller than the American Legion building, and you're correct. So what we're trying to do with this is at least break up the overall massing of the building, but it doesn't specifically speak to transitions between a 1-story building and a 3-story building, for example. That's not part of, what the elements are trying to do there. So, no.
The guideline says it's to blend building massing between downtown and any adjacent residentially zoned neighborhoods to reduce perceived mass of buildings. So it's really to reduce the perceived mass along that one side.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, We will invite the applicant to speak in just a moment. I just wanted to advise, commissioners to focus their questions on the criteria, before us, if we're going to ask any clarifying questions of the applicant. Would the applicant or their representative like to comment?
Okay, Jean, I've given you permission to speak, so you should be able to do so. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, my name is Gene Blonty, and I'm the architect, and I'm based out of Salem, Oregon, and I appreciate the ability to do Zoom. And I want to say that Vera did a great job. She's been very helpful through the process in helping us get through the ins and outs of the zoning code. And she's correct. We kind of struggled with finding a way to incorporate the setback on the top of the building. There's always challenges when you do that structurally because you're kind of moving shear walls and bearing walls around. And so we kind of looked at the guidelines and hoping that we could meet that. And then present this as a type 3 to you. We've provided some steps in the tops of the building, some elevation changes, 3 foot, and then we also stepped the building in and out from the street 2 feet. And we provided some balconies to just try to help overall reduce, the perceived look of a big block of a building sitting on the corner. So, anyway, we are in support of staff's decision and available for any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from the commission for the applicant? Okay. Well, thank you very much for being here, Dean.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here and being available to respond to any questions that might come up. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. So we can now recognize those persons submitting public testimony on this application. And just a quick check, do we have anybody present?
No, we do not.
Okay. Then I'll just kind of move on. So nobody here to speak. So we'll just go right into public testimony portion of the hearing on the request of the Type 3 Downtown Design Review at 10900 Southeast 21st Avenue. File number DR-2025-001 is now closed. Just one last chance. Is there any other questions for staff from the commission? Okay, then are we ready for discussion? And who would like to lead us off?
I'll lead us off.
Thank you.
I appreciate the preparation that went into this. I think it's pretty clear to see how we can meet as best we can given the circumstances. I really appreciate the variation in breaking up the building mass. I think that does a good job in visually breaking up what is a fairly long building between the corner of 21st and Monroe to the Legion there. One challenge I would note is that, with the current land use that we have today, with the Waldorf School being open, with the corner of the Key Bank parking lot being open, the Made in Milwaukie and Mini Mart being open, that's not guaranteed. That is very much, I don't know what the zoning is on the Waldorf, but I mean, we could see another building like this go up across the street or across the corner. So that, just to challenge the, contributing that those areas are contributing to the light and airiness feeling of that area. That's for today, but maybe not tomorrow. But yeah, in general, I'm in favor of this. I think it, it's important to add housing to our central downtown core in Milwaukee, and yeah, appreciate this this coming forward in its case. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Huff. Would anyone else like to add their comments?
I just want to echo that I also, I do think that the application leans on the adjacent open areas as being, kind of a benefit or a reason why it's less of potentially visually intrusive. And I also think that that's, from it's not necessarily always going to be the case. And it's always possible that this kind of housing being developed could be the impetus for additional adjacent type properties if folks see a financial benefit. I don't think there's an immediate or known reason to believe that there is an adjacent property that's trying to do this right now. So I don't think that it's fair to, to lean on that because we don't have an immediate expectation that there'd be some accumulative situation. But I think it's something that needs to be considered. You stated there, or staff had stated that there was one other property that had, this request that was approved, and it kind of makes me question the way that it's written right now, when it wouldn't be approved, because I think if we see that it reduces the amount of rentable space that can be developed, I think it's always going to be something that we push up against. But I think it's important to go back to the ethos of why that was put there in the first place. I do think there is benefit to having a little bit more of a visual breakup. I don't think any of us really want to see our downtown become fully incredibly densified, at least not in 5 years, maybe give it some time. So just, I really want us to be thinking about that. We can't weigh it against anything that's not happening right now, but cumulatively, I do think we should keep that in mind. That being said, I do really appreciate the breaks in the massing. I do think the way they've been proposed, kind of undulating on the facades that, public facing it, is very appealing. It really kind of reminds me of, other housing that currently exists downtown. So I don't think it's incompatible. It's kind of interesting how our housing, kind of these main corner kind of buildings are kind of getting spread out around downtown. So it's kind of neat to see that. It's good to see the property get utilized, in a way that's beneficial to people. I'm actually happy to see the parking. I know that's not part of this application, so I'm not going to dwell on that, but I was happy to see that there would be parking for that large of a building, because there is really very little street parking. So I am inclined to approve the application subject to the recommendations and findings. I do very much appreciate the presentation and the time that went into preparing all of this.
Yeah, I feel like I'm echoing the sentiments of Commissioner Krajcik and Commissioner Hess. My mind is very much on the long-term implications of approving something like this and the precedent set by approving the variance for axletree, and in this case, allowing the setback, allowing for this, us not to go for the setback here. I think it's really important to allow for access to light and air and sky in our downtown. And I think about kind of where Washington Street is in the moment with axletree and the shade that's cast, and what our downtown is going to look like in a few years' time with increased development, with access to air and sky. And I appreciate the engineering restraints, but I do have a lot of concerns about just the outdoor feel of downtown. And I am approaching this application with a fair bit of hesitancy because of that. Yeah, very much echoing the sentiments of my other commissioners.
other commissioners with comments before I take the floor? Okay. Yeah, what we have before us really, is, a pretty narrow focus on a pretty broad range of application. Obviously, there's lots of standards for downtown design review. But we're really focused on, this one guideline. Quite honestly, if the commission, wanted to, we could certainly delete the 6th paragraph from the finding for guideline H. That's the paragraph 6 is the one that says the building is at the intersection of Monroe Street and 21st Avenue. Across Monroe Street is an open landscaped area and on-site parking for the Portland Waldorf School. The school does not have a large presence of buildings along Monroe Street, and lower 1- and 2-story buildings are adjacent to this site, and a parking lot exists at the opposite corner. These conditions will help break down the visual height of the new building, providing more of a sense of openness around the new development. We certainly delete that paragraph. However, I don't believe that it materially changes the findings from warranting approval as presented by staff. Ultimately, this is a very practical variance to request, and not that it applies here, but we did recently request from the state that they've been requiring cities and jurisdictions generally to approve lots of different adjustments, which are really small variances. And the city asked for or right now it's under review. We actually received a notification today and I'm losing my words, but the city asked for its why can't I think of the word for this? So ultimately, the state won't mandate that we have to approve all of these adjustments. We showed that we don't need, because we approve these variances. And lots of times, when proposals for housing come through that request variances so that we can get more housing out of, what's being proposed than we would under the standards, we often approve those. And so, it is consistent with our policies for more housing, particularly down in the downtown core, to approve variances that ultimately allow more dwellings to be included. And then I also wanted to kind of just add a comment about the public comment that did come through late today. While it doesn't really address the approval criteria, they do raise some concerns that are very, very valid in the current context. But this ultimately the provision of more housing, bringing more housing to the supply, will always have a downward impact, downward pressure on prices and rents. And so, really, we want to make sure that, provided that, the standards are met and that the guideline is whatever standards are not met, that the proposal is consistent with the guidelines, that we, are looking to, make sure that we're approving and adding more housing to the supply, again, particularly in downtown. So it's very nice to see this site being, looked at for adding several dozen more housing units. It's certainly a more intense and probably a better use of the land that is downtown than having the small bank that was there before. So ultimately this is a good transition. I see this as a good transition for the city. This is really what we need more of, and our standards and guidelines are really set up to allow this kind of discretion so that we can, hear out the applicant and see, what their concerns are about, about meeting the standards, and then how they're responding to the guidelines in order to provide something. It may not be exactly what we would do if we were the architect, but if it's consistent with the criteria and consistent with the guidelines, then we should approve it. And that's where I'm landing on this right now. So I'd be happy, again, to amend the findings to delete that one paragraph if it would help other commissioners feel that the findings better reflect the evidence in the record. I would be satisfied doing that. But once again, I don't believe that deleting that one paragraph would materially change the findings in a way that would warrant any additional conditions of approval, or certainly not a denial based on this one guideline. So that's where I'm landing on this. I'm prepared to vote to approve it tonight, really as presented by staff, or with paragraph 6 under finding H of the downtown design guidelines deleted with the feedback from my fellow commissioners. Anybody else have any comments or any thoughts about deleting paragraph 6 of that finding?
I would say I don't think that we need to delete the paragraph because it does accurately reflect the situation at hand. And in a way, I think it almost is better to have it in the record that we're noting it as a positive thing, because if, in the future, there was to be a different development that had a different set of parameters and it were to reduce some of those, change that situation in some way, I think it's probably better to have it on the record that it was, it was the case that it had changed. I agree with you. I don't think that it doesn't change, my personal, desire to approve. Regardless, I just think it was a good talking point to have. So I'm glad that folks brought that up, but I don't think anything needs to change in the language.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback. Anybody else have comments? If not, we might be ready for our motion.
Motion to approve DR 2025-001.
We have a motion on the floor to approve as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion before a vote? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Laura, would you be willing to poll the commission for their votes?
Yes, Commissioner Garvey?
Nay.
Commissioner Pennick?
Nay.
Commissioner Luther?
Aye.
Commissioner Graycheck?
Aye.
Commissioner Hess?
Aye.
Commissioner Edge?
Aye. That was a 4-3?
Yes. No,
Okay.
3.
Motion passes 4-3.
No, it's 4-2, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Jacob's not here. I'm just giving him a no vote there. So yeah, motion passes 4-2. Thank you. Then let's see. Application DR tag 2025-001 is approved. If anyone wishes to appeal the commission's decision to the City Council, you must make application stating the grounds for your appeal within 15 days of the mailing of the notice of decision. Please see planning staff for details. So at this point of the agenda, the commission will act as the Community Involvement Advisory Committee. Do staff or CIAC members have any items to report?
I do not.
Anything from the commissioners? Okay, and then no one in the audience, is that correct, Laura?
That is correct.
Okay, then we'll move down to, do any commissioners have any other items for discussion?
I don't have any other items for discussion at the moment.
Okay. Then I think we are into the forecast.
That is correct. All right, May 27th, We're canceling the May 27th meeting, just so you all are aware. So we will send out a cancellation tomorrow. And then we'll be back at it on June 10th. We're going to come in and go over the transportation system plan projects that are slated for discussion. We're going to do that. And then also we have been working, Vera and I, and with Joseph Brilio, our assistant city manager, been working with city council on our affordable housing code incentive package. And so we're going to have a work session with you all to kind of get your feedback and see what we've done. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Commissioner Garvey, because this is her wheelhouse. And then we'll be back, Vera will be back on June 24th. I'm actually out of town, but they're going to run the show. We've got another CSU, a conditional community service use, and then we have the Middle Housing Land Division Code amendments. We will talk you through what needs to change. We had a little glitch and we have fixed it, and we're going to bring it back to you because it's all new stuff. So we're working our way through it. So that's what's slated coming up.
We get to learn about limited land use decisions. Is that
Only
what
if you
that will be
insist.
about, Laura?
Vera says only if you insist.
I may. All right. Well, that's a great. Thanks for that forecast. I guess we're done. We got 2 public hearings done before 8 o'clock. That's pretty amazing. Thanks, everybody. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
A motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any last discussion? Okay. All those in favor of adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.